Bago nagkaroon ng pandemya, dumaan tayo sa iba't ibang ruta. Pasilyo, iskinita, kalsada. Nakasalamuhan natin ang iba't ibang tao kahit hindi natin sila kilala. Lalaki, babae, estudyante, trabahador, bata, matanda, basurero, kutsero, pasahero, o kahit ano pa sila, naging parte sila ng minsanan nating paglalakbay. Gayon din, nakita natin ang ganda at ang hirap ng buhay. At sa bawat taong nakasalamuhan natin sa ating paglalakbay, may kanya-kanya yang kwento, sarili nilang paglalayag sa maalon na buhay. Kaya kung minsan, hindi ko lubusang maisip kung bakit may mga taong pinipiling mangusga ng iba. Palagi silang may napupuna, lalo na kung kakaiba ka. Sana makatulong ang video na to pang mamulat ang lahat na ang diskriminasyon ay nag-i-exist sa lipunan na ginagalawan natin, lalo na sa mga PWD.
Ayan po, magandang umaga po. Ako po si Rina S. Pagtakunan na galing sa pamantasan ng Nueva Ecija University of Science and Technology o kilalang NEUST. Andito po ako tayo para interviewin kayo patungkol po sa PWD o Person with Disability. Ito po tayo, tatanungin ko lang po kayo ng ilang questionnaire patungkol sa inyong disability. Ito po tayo, uumpisahan ko po sa, ano pong pangalan nyo?
Dionisio Santos Castilla.
Ilang taon po kayo, tatay?
December 26, 1947.
Tayo, yung disability niyo po ba is inborn?
70.
Studente po. Hanggang anong grade po yung natapos nyo, tayo?
Grade
Ito po tayo, nakaranas po ba kayo ng discrimination sa school?
6. Discrimination.
Parang panghuhusga po, parang inaano po, ginajudge po nila kayo.
Hindi naman. Kami ang hari noon sa school.
Ito po, pwede nyo po bang ikwento o pinakamalalang nangyaring discrimination sa inyo dahil sa disability nyo? Dahil po wala pong discrimination na nangyari sa inyo, iaano ko na lang po to na, minsan po ba naisip nyo na po bang mag-suicide dahil doon? Oo, hindi po. Bakit po?
Nang sa buhay ganito, mahirap ang buhay. Gusto ko nang magpakamatay sa dahil may nagsabi sa akin na hindi ka tatanggapin sa langit o si Panginoon na ikaw ay pagkakamatay. Iyon, itinong ko sa isipan ko na naman, tinitiis ko na lang yung hirap na nagawa sa akin, yung kapalaran ko.
Tay, syempre po hindi po kayo nag-suicide. Ito po tatanungin ko, tay, sa tingin nyo po, ano po ang pinaka-best achievement nyo sa kabila ng disability nyo po?
Tungkol sa dito sa nangyari sa atin.
Opo, best achievement nyo po.
Alam mo naman ang masipag, ayaw ko yung ganitong naka-istambay, nakakupal lang ako dyan na anong matrabaho, puputol ng tao, nangangako, yun, nakakuha sa accident dito ng matrabaho.
Ito po tayo. Panghuli po, ano pong mapapayo nyo sa mga tulad ng PWD, lalo na sa mga estudyante at kabataan na nawawalan ng pag-asa dahil may disability sila?
Huwag niya akong turaran, mas maakuan yung masama pala yung masipag na masyado, mas mapan yung may katamara pala. Yun ang silbar ko sa sarili ko. Hindi ko kinuha sa buhat sa sarili ko. Kahit saan ako magkuhan, naghahanap buhay ako. Mga makuhan na palay, pinukuhan ko yan, gagapas lang ako, kikita. Pupunta na naman siya sa bila, magsusunong ng palay. Yun ang panahon na hanap buhay. Kahit saan ako nagkuhan, ayaw ko yung naka-istambay. Oo. Kaya ganito, yung kapalaran ko kakuhan, ako rin ang may kasalanan pala. At mahirap yung masipag masyado. Yan ang silbar ko talaga.
Tayo sa sinabi niyo po, nais po namin magpasalamat dahil kayo po ay nakatulong sa aming video presentation na magbigay ng pag-asa sa mga taong may disability. Thank you po. Ano pong pangalan niyo po?
Ryan ang ina ninyo.
Ilan taon na po kayo?
Ako,
Inborn po ba yung pagiging disabled niyo po?
wala nung inawanak ako.
Ano pong grade po yung natapos niyo po?
High school.
Sa school po, nakaranas po ba kayo ng discrimination po?
Mm.
Paano niyo po hinahandle po yung mga nandalait po sa inyo?
Sa akin ano lang, yung nakasaw loob para makatapos sa pag-aaral.
Pwede niyo po bang ikwento yung pinakamalalang nangyaring discrimination po sa inyo sa school po?
Yung ako, nilalait nila ako.
Minsan po ba inisip niyo pong mag-suicide po dahil doon?
Hindi naman, ano lang yung ano ko. Parang gusto ko lang makatapos ng pag-aaral.
Sa tingin niyo po, ano po ang best achievements niyo po sa kabila po ng disability niyo po?
Sa yung pangarap ko na makatapos ng pag-aaral.
Di ba po sumali po kayo sa track and field po ba yun?
Oo. Wala nung section year.
Tapos lumaban din po kayo ng Clara po.
Now, 2016, sa kami, sa Bataan.
Ano pong mapapayo niyo po sa mga tulad niyo pong PWD, lalo na sa mga estudyante at kabataang nawawalan ng pag-asa dahil may disability po sila?
Kung ako sa kanila, itinitin ko lumaban habang may buhay, may pag-asa.
Thank you po!
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar. This is Milgriok, Pambitalad 2A. And for this webinar, we're going to talk about the discrimination experienced by PWD or person with disabilities. I assure to everyone that this webinar give you insight and awareness na ang diskriminasyon sa mga PWD ay nag-i-exist sa lipunang ginagalawan natin. Upang magsimula ang webinar na ito, ang una natin pag-uusapan ay ang diskriminasyong kinaharap ng mga PWD dito sa Pilipinas. According to the Department of United States, in its annual report released in March 14, persons with disability or PWD in the Philippines continue to face discrimination in 2018, as a policy crafted to help them was not efficiently enforced. The report entitled Country Reports in Human Rights Practice on 2018 said that the National Council for Disability Affairs crafted a policy for the rehabilitation, self-development, and self-reliance of PWD, but the law was not effectively enforced and many barriers remained for persons with disability. It also noted that majority of public buildings remained inaccessible for PWDs. Many schools had architectural barriers that make attendance difficult for persons with disability. Government efforts for improved access to transportation for persons with disability were limited. The Department of Education 648 Separate Education Center did not provide nationwide coverage, and the government lacked a clear system for informing parents for children with disability of their educational rights, and did not have well-defined procedure for reporting discrimination in education. The report also said policies for PWD were ineffective due to weak implementation, insufficient funding, and inadequately focused integrative government programs, and citing information from advocacy groups in the country. Service for 3,374 PWD were provided by the Department of Social Welfare and Development o DSWD in 2018, which is significantly more than estimated figures in 2017. However, only 60% of local government units had an office dedicated for PWDs. And it also pointed out that among the policy, the level of field for PWD were the mental health law and constitutional provision that forbids discrimination against persons with disabilities.
However, PWDs still face discrimination in seeking jobs. Persons with disability experience discrimination in hiring and employment. The Labor Department estimated that only 10% of employable persons with disabilities were able to find work. Malawak ang ibig sabihin ng diskriminasyon. Pwedeng sa kulay, kultura, paniniwala. Kapag iba-iba tayo ng pinapaniwalaan at hindi natin ma-meet yung expectation natin sa isang tao, doon nagsisimula ang discrimination. Pero dito sa discrimination para sa PWD, makikita natin na hindi pa handa yung Pilipinas na mag-cope up ng ganitong issue. Paano ko nasabi na hindi pa kaya ng Pilipinas na mag-cope up sa ganitong uri ng issue o ganitong pangangailangan ng mga PWD? Kasi kung titingnan natin sa mga sinabi ko, hindi pa ganun kakongkreto yung mga policy na ipinapatupad nila at hindi din ganun kadami yung mga establishmento na para sa mga PWD talaga. Kanina nabanggit ko yung diskriminasyon ng mga PWD o yung diskriminasyon na nangyayari sa mga PWD kapag naghahanap sila ng trabaho. At sabi ko doon, 10% lang sa mga PWD ang tunay na nakakahanap talaga ng trabaho. Kasi yung ibang employer o yung mga boss o yung mga naghahanap ng mga trabahador, syempre kapag maghahanap ka ng trabahador mo, gusto mo yung walang sabit o walang disability. Gayun pa man, yung mga may disability, kasi karaniwan yung may mga disability, kung ano yung kayang gawin ng iba, kaya din nila. Kaya lang talaga ang problema pinapangunahan ng mga employer kung minsan yung kakayanan ng mga PWD. Kaya sayang yung ibang skill na alam ng mga PWD. At nasasayang din yung talent nila. Opinion ko lang naman to, kung hindi kayang maprotektahan pa sa ngayon ng gobyerno ang mga PWD at hindi maibigay sa kanila ang wastong karapatan nila, tayo bilang mamamayan may magagawa tayo. Sa paanong paraan? Respeto. Hindi porket iba sila sa atin o may mga kapansanan sila or may mga disability sila ay gagawin natin silang katatawanan at gawing joke yung pagiging bulag, pipi, bingi nila o iba pa o kahit ano pa yung karamdaman nila, kung ano pa yung disability nila. Respeto lang talaga sa bawat isa. Kung nire-respeto ka niya, respetuhin mo din siya para give and take kayo. Tsaka hindi naman sila lumalaban kasi alam nilang na may disability sila. Di ba mababait naman yung may mga disabilities? Marami akong kilala na may disabilities pero mababait na tao. Ikaw bilang future educator, ang tanging magagawa mo lang sa ngayon ay irespeto ang kapwa mo lalo na kung may disability ito at ihanda ang sarili kung sakaling makatagpo tayo ng ganitong sitwasyon upang matulungan yung mga person with disability na or mga magiging estudyante natin na may special na pangangailangan. Gayon din, yung matututunan sa webinar na ito ay magamit sa hinaharap upang kahit hindi man natin masolusyonan totally yung discrimination against PWD ay mabawasan natin at maituro natin ng diskriminasyon ay hindi makakabuti kanino man. And for the next presenter, here's Ma'am Regina Pagtakunan. Miss Regina Pagtakunan, the floor is yours.
Good day everyone! My topic is all about what in the equality says about disability discrimination. You're right, under Equality Act 2010. The Equality Act became law in 2010. It covers everyone in Britain and protects people from discrimination, harassment, and victimization. Who is protected by the Equality Act? Everyone is protected. This is because the Equality Act protects people against discrimination because of the protected characteristic that all we have. Under the Equality Act, there are 9 protected characteristics. There are age, disability, gender reassessment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion and belief, and sex. Situation in which you are protected from discrimination. Under the Equality Act, you are protected from discrimination when you are in the workplace, When you use public services like healthcare, for example, visiting your doctor or local hospital or education. When you use business and other organizations that provide services and goods like shop, restaurants, and cinemas. When you use transport, when you join a club association like your local tennis club, when you have contact with public bodies like your local council or government department. How can you be discriminated against? There are 4 types of discrimination. There are direct and indirect discrimination, harassment, and victimization. The first one, direct discrimination. This means treating one person worse than other person because of protected characteristic. For example, a promotion come up at work. The employer believe that people's memories get worse as they get older, so does not tell of his or the employee about it because he think that employee would not be able to the job. Second one, indirect discrimination. This can happen when an organization put a rule or policy or a way of doing things in place which has a worse impact on someone with a protected characteristic than someone's without one. For example, a local authority is planning to redevelop some of its housing. It decides to hold consultations even the evening. Many of the female residents complain that they cannot attend this meeting because of children care responsibility. The third one, harassment. This means people cannot treat you in a way that violates your dignity or create a hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment. For example, a man with Down syndrome is visiting a pub with friends. The bar staff make derogatory and offensive comments about him, which upsets and offend him. The fourth one, victimization. This means people cannot treat you unfairly if you are taking actions under the Equality Act, like making a complaint of discrimination or if you supporting someone else who is doing so. For example, an employee makes complaint or sexual harassment at work and discriminate as is consequence. What else does the Equality Act do? Public sector equality duty. The Equality Act also requires public bodies like local council, hospital, publicly funded services provider to consider how their decisions and policies affects people with different protected characteristic. The public body also should have evidence to show how it has done this. For example, a local authority wants to improve its local bus services. It carry out the survey of people who use public transport and find that very few women use buses at night because they are worried about sexual harassment. The local authority decides to work with the police and transport provider as well as the local residents to find way to address this problem and make the bus service more inclusive.
Thank you, Miss Regina. Now, I'll discuss what is classes as a disability. In the Equality Act, a disability means a physical or a mental condition which has a substantial and long-term impact on your ability to do a normal day-to-day activities. The acts protect people against discrimination, harassment, or victimization in employment and as a user of private and public service based on 9 protected characteristics: the age, disability, gender assignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion, or belief, sex and sex orientation, and age. The Equality Act to have due regard to need to eliminate discrimination, to advance equality of opportunity, and to foster good relationship. There's a lot of disability that covered by Equality Act. These are example. You are covered by the Equality Act if you have progressive condition like HIV, cancer, or multiple sclerosis. Even if you are currently able to carry out normal day-to-day activities, you are protected as soon as you are diagnosed with a progressive condition. Next is you are also covered by the Equality Act. And now, I will pass the time now to the next presenter, Miss Jolina Terana, to explain to us their topic, different types of disability discrimination.
Thank you, Sir Gerald Deus. Good day, everyone. I am Julina Tarana from College of Education, one of the presenter of Group 2. So, I will discuss the 6 main types of disability discrimination. First, direct discrimination. This happens when someone treats you worse than other person in a similar situation because of disability. For example, during an interview, a job applicant tells the potential employer that he has multiple sclerosis. The employer decides not to appoint him even though he's the best candidate they have interviewed because they assume he will need a lot of time off sick. So ito yung actual na naranasan ng merong disabilities sa pag-a-apply ng trabaho. So kahit pa gaano kagaling sa interview, ay napapansin pa rin yung kalagayan ng isang merong disabilities. Dahil iniisip ng ibang kumpanya na pabigat lang to or mahirapan sa trabaho. Kahit pa hindi nila nakikita yung talagang kakayahan ng isang may disabilities. Second, indirect discrimination. This happens when an organization has a particular policy or way of working that has a worse impact on disabled people compared to people who are not disabled. Indirect disability discrimination is unlawful unless the organization or employer is able to show that there is a good reason for the policy and it is proportionate. This is known as objective justification. For example, a job advert states that all applicants must have a driving license. This puts some disabled people at a disadvantage because they may not have a driving license. Because, for example, they have epilepsy. If the advert is for a bus driver job, the requirements will be justified. So, sa pag-apply nga ng trabaho, ay mayroong requirements para makapasok. So, sa mga mayroong disability, disadvantage ito sa kanila. Dahil sa hinihingi na adverse state, ay wala silang kakayahan para gawin ito. Katulad na lamang ng binigay kong example na mayroong epilepsy. So, wala itong kakayahan para magkaroon ng driving license dahil sa kalagayan niya. Third, failure to reasonable adjustment. Under the Equality Act, employers and organizations have a responsibility to make sure that disabled people can access jobs, educations, and services as easily as non-disabled people. So, ang mga taong may disability ay may kakayahan pa rin makapag-aral or makapagtrabaho. Dahil hindi ito hadlang para hindi nila matupad ang pangarap nila at makatulong sa pamilya. Dahil nais nilang patunayan na may mararating pa rin sila sa buhay. This is known as the duty to make reasonable adjustment. So, meron pa rin talaga na discrimination ang mga taong may disability. Disabled people can experience discrimination if the employer or organization doesn't make reasonable adjustment. This is known as a failure to make a reasonable adjustment. For example, an employee with mobility impairments needs a parking space close to the office. However, her employer only gives parking space to senior managers and refuses to give her a designated parking space. So, sinasabi nga dito na iba-iba pakikitungo sa mayroong disability at sa ibang tao. Mas binibigyan nila ng pansin yung mas matataas na tao katulad ng alang ng senior manager. Mas priority nila itong bigyan ng parking space imbis na yung mayroong disability. So what is reasonable depends on a number of factors, including the resources available to the organization making the adjustment. If an organization already has a number of parking space, it will be a reasonable for its designated one close to the entrance to the employee. So, mas makabuti nga nabigyan lahat ng priority, meron mang disability o wala. Kailangan patay-pantay ang pakikitungo at bigyan ng pansin na mayroong disability. Example nga kanina sa parking space. So, kailangan may parking space para sa mga senior manager. At syempre, meron din parking space sa mayroong disability at sa iba pa. So, lahat ay makikinabang. Lahat ay matutulungan at napapagaan ng trabaho or sa pagpasok sa trabaho. I will pass the time now to the next presenter, Ma'am Rica De Jesus, to continue discussion the main types of disability discrimination.
I am Rica De Jesus, your next reporter. Today, I will discuss discrimination arising from disability, harassment, and victimization. First, discrimination arising from disability. The Equal Act also protects people from discrimination arising from disability. This protects you from being treated badly because of something connected to your disability, such as having an assistant dog or needing time off for medical appointments. This does not apply unless the person who discriminated against you knew you had a disability or ought to have known. For example, a private nursery refuses to give a place to a little boy because he is not toilet trained. His parents have told them that he is not toilet trained because he has a hair-sprung disease, but they still refuse to give him a place. This discrimination arising from the little boy's disability. Second, an employee with cancer is prevented from receiving a bonus because of time she has taken off to receive her treatment. Discrimination arising from disability is unlawful unless the organization or employer is able to show that there is a good reason for the treatment and it is proportionate. This is known as objective justification. For example, an employee who is eyesight has seriously deteriorated cannot do as much work as his non-disabled colleagues. If his employees so to dismiss him after ruling out the possibility of redeployment, the employer would need to show that this was for good reason and was proportionate. Next topic, harassment. Harassment occurs when someone treats you in a way that makes you feel humiliated, offended, or degraded. For example, a disabled woman is regularly sworn at and called names by colleagues at work because of her disability. Harassment can never be justified. However, if an organization or employer can show it did everything it could to prevent people who work for it from behaving like that, you will not be able to make a claim for harassment against it, although you could make a claim against the harasser. Topic is victimization. This is when you are treated badly because you have made complaint of discrimination under the Equality Act. It can also occur if you are supporting someone who has made a complaint of discrimination. For example, an employee has made a complaint of disability discrimination. The employer threatens to sack them unless they withdraw the complaint. Last, an employer threatens to sack a member of staff because he thinks she intends to support a collegious disability discrimination claim. And that's all for my report. And now, I will give the floor to Mr. Gerald Deus. It's your turn, Mr. Gerald.
Thank you, Ms. Rica de Jesus. Now, I discuss occupational requirements and positive action are clarified in statutory codes of practice on employment. But first, what is statutory code of practice on employment? The codes are designed to provide detailed guidance to organization about what the Equality Act means. Codes of practice for employment provide guidance and direction to employers and employees on what to do in particular circumstances. These codes cover discrimination in employment and work-related activities under is based on the principle that people with the protected characteristic set out in the Act should not be discriminated against in employment. When seeking employment or when engaged in occupational or activities related to work. What else does the Equality Act protect against? Important purpose of the Act is to unify the legislation outlawing discrimination against people with different protected characteristics. Where this is appropriate, there are, however, some significant differences and exceptions. The Equality Act say the employers cannot ask job applicants about their health or disability until they have been offered a job, except in a specific circumstances where the information is necessary for the application process or a requirement for a job. For example, a job applicant fills in the application form which asks people to state whether they are taking any medication. Unless there's a good reason why the employer needs to know this information, then the question should be not be asked. Now, I will pass the time now to the next presenter, Miss Christine Joy A. Maranan, to explain to us the topic of RA 7277 or 1994 Magna Carta for Persons with Disabilities.
So, thank you, Mr. Gerald Deus. Now, let's talk about the RA 7277. So, RA 7277 in 1994, or it is also called Magna Carta for Persons with Disabilities. It is an act providing for rehabilitation, self-development, and self-reliance of disabled person and their integration into the mainstream of society and for other purposes. So, ayon dito sa Republic Act No. 7277, ang isang mamamayang may kapansanan o person with disabilities ay ang sinumang nalilimitahan ang ilang kakayahan dala ng kapansanan sa pag-iisip, pagkikilos, pandinig o sa paningin. Sa ilalim ng batas na ito, na tinatawag nga na ring Magna Carta for Persons with Disabilities, nakasaad ang ilang mga karapatan at pribilehiyong tinatamasa ng mga PWD. So, these are the rights and privileges of disabled persons. First, equal opportunity for employment. No PWD shall deny to access opportunities for suitable employment. So, bawal silang hindi tanggapi sa trabaho dahil sa kanilang kapansanan. Dapat ay magbigay sila ng suitable opportunities for their employment. Second, access to quality education. Adequate access to quality education and ample opportunities to develop their skills and knowledge. That's why the Philippines have a SPED teachers and SPED program for them. So the third is National Health Program. Shall institute a national health program to attain the disability prevention, recognition, and early rehabilitation for PWDs. They should priority when it comes to health, and some of them give them a 20% discount in drugstore, medical checks-up, and laboratories fees. So the fourth is auxiliary social services. Shall be provided with the necessary auxiliary services that will restore their social functioning and participation in community affairs. They should give 20% discount in hotel and other establishments such as restaurant, circus, cinemas, carnivals, and other places like those. So, next is telecommunication. So, PWDs need a communication. That's why hindi sila pwedeng tanggihan sa pagkakaroon ng telecommunication. Then, next is accessibility or barrier-free environment. The state shall ensure the attainment of a barrier-free environment that will enable persons with disabilities to have access in public and private buildings and establishment. Halimbawa, di ba, may mga paglalagay ng mga rampa sa sidewalk at sa mga pasukan ng mga gusali for the PWDs. So, lastly is political and civil rights. Yes, PWDs shall allow to be assisted by a person of his choice of voting in the national or local elections. So, maaari sila at pwedeng silang makaboto. Then, nakasaad din sa batas na dapat siguraduhin ng gobyerno na ang mga opisina nitong nagbibigay ng serbisyo para sa PWD ay madaling puntahan. So, ang mga sino mang lalabag sa batas na ito ay maaaring maharap sa parusang pagkakulong o pagmumulta. So, here are the RA 7277 prescribed penalties for violation of the law as follows. First violation. A fine if not less than 50,000 but not exceeding 100,000 or imprisonment of not less than 6 months and not more than in 2 years or both at the discretion of the court. So, para sa unang paglabag, magmumulta ng hindi kukulanging 50,000 ngunit hindi rin lalagpas sa 100,000 o pagkakakulong na hindi kukulangin sa 6 na buwan ngunit hindi rin hihigit sa 2 taon. So, for any subscription violation or sa mga susunod pang violation, a fine of not less than 100,000 but not exceeding 200,000 or imprisonment for not less than 2 years but not more 6 years or both at the discretion of the court. So, para sa anumang kasunod na paglabag, magmumulta ng hindi kukulangin sa 100,000 ngunit hindi rin lalagpas sa 200,000 o pagkakabilanggo ng hindi kukulangin sa 2 taon, ngunit hindi rin hihigit sa 6 na taon o paghuhusga sa korte. So, for any person who abuses the privileges, imprisonment for not less than 2 years or fine of not less than 5,000, but not more than 50,000 or both at the discretion of the court. So, para sa sino mang taong umaabuso sa mga pribilehiyo ng mga PWD, pagkakabilanggo ng hindi kukulangin sa 2 taon o multa na hindi kukulangin sa 5,000 ngunit hindi hihigit sa 50,000 o pareho sa paghuhusga ng korte. So, for a corporation, organization, or any similar entity, the official directly involved should be liable therefore. For an foreigner, immediate deportation without further deportation proceeding. So, para naman sa mga corporation o sa mga samahan, opisyal, na direktong kasangkot ay mananagot sa makatubid. Para sa isang dayuhan, agara silang papaalisin dito nang walang kaano-ano man. So, now, I will pass the time to the next presenter, Ma'am Sheena Bautista, to explain to us the topic about Batas Pambansa bilang 344. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deus Gerald. So, ano nga ba ang Batas Pambansa bilang 344? Ang Batas Pambansa bilang 344 is an act to enhance the mobility of disabled persons by requiring certain buildings, institutions, establishments, and public utilities to install facilities and other devices. In Section 1, our government created an Act Number 344 for the welfare of those disabled persons. It is stated here that if the government shall construct or renovate all public-private buildings for public use like school buildings, airport, sports and recreation centers, and complexes. Also includes shopping centers or establishments, public marking places, workplaces, and public utilities. These buildings, institutions, establishments, and public utilities can be repaired or renovated with our building permit, and license. The owner shall see to it that upon repairing or constructing those establishments, building will enable the disabled persons can use those buildings. In short, disabled persons should fully participate in social life and in the development of our society. Disabled persons must be happy in using those renovated buildings. In Section 2, as for public conveyance, the government, for the benefit of disabled persons, shall provide a special bus staff designed to disabled persons. Doing discrimination to disabled person is transportation for passengers is hereby declared unlawful. Section 3. The Minister of Public Works and Highways and Minister of Transportation and Communications, and with the coordinations to the Office of the National Commission concerning disabled persons, they should to prepare all necessary rules and regulations to do provisions of this Act 344. In Section 4, anybody once violating this Act 344 shall be punished by the court, suffering an imprisonment of not less than 1 month but not more than 1 year. There is a fine of 2,000 to 5,000 or it depends, by the decision of the court. In Section 5, all laws, both executive and administrative orders, rules and regulations with irregularities in the provisions and other punishable by the laws. Section 6. This act shall take effect upon this approval. I will pass the time now to the next presenter, Ma'am Joanne Joy Sabas, to explain to us the topic of RA 7610.
Thank you, Ma'am Sheena May Bautista. Good day, everyone. My name is Joanne Joy L. Sabas from BTLED 2A, and for today, I'm going to discuss Republic Act 7610 Series of 1992. Ano nga ba yung batas na ito? It is an act providing for strong deterrence and special protection against child abuse, exploitation, and other purposes. So, paano ba nasasabi na child abuse? May iba't ibang uri kasi ng child abuse. Number 1 ay ang psychological. Ito ay nakakaapekto sa mental health ng bata, especially pagka ang lugar or environment ay magulo or toxic. Halimbawa din nito ay ang dalawang magulang niya ay nag-aaway and then nasasaksihan niya yung pananakit at pang-aabuso din ng magulang niya sa isa't isa. Number 2 is ang physical abuse. Ito yung sobra na sa pagdidisiplina na napupunta na sa pagkakaroon ng latay ng bata, pagkakaroon ng sugat, pambubugbog na sa bata. Kumbaga sobra-sobra na yung pagdidisiplina. Hindi naman masamang paluin yung bata pero dapat yung hindi sobra-sobra. At ipapaliwanag din yung kamalian ng bata kung bakit siya pinalo. Number 3 is ang neglect o kapabayaan. Pwede kasing ang bata ay maka-aksidente o kaya ma-aksidente dahil nga sa sobrang curious nila, lahat ng bagay gusto nilang matutunan. And then, number 4 is ang cruelty o pagmamalupit. Halimbawa dito ay, ako ay isang tiya and then ang parents ng aking pamangkin ay pinapadala na ko upang alagaan ko ang kanilang anak. And then, hindi ko binibigyan ng sapat na pangangailangan ng bata. At hindi ko siya pinapakain at binubugbog ko pa siya or sinasaktan. Papasok dun yung cruelty. Next is ang emotional maltreatment. Ito, pwedeng makaapekto to sa development ng bata dahil sa kanyang emotional. And then, next is degrades the intrinsic worth and dignity of child. Dito, yung pamamahiya sa bata, panlalait sa bata, which is madaming nakakakita. And nakakaapekto ito sa self-esteem niya, sa confidence niya. Next is unreasonable deprivation of basic needs for survival. Ito naman yung halimbawa yung mga magulang is hindi nila naibibigay yung mga pangangailangan ng bata. Ano ba yung mga pangangailangan ng bata? Pagkain, inumin, tahanan, pumapasok sa school. And then, next is failure to immediately give medical treatment to an injured child. For example, may batang na-aksidente and then dinala sa ospital at napabayaan ng ospital or hindi nabigyan ng paunang lunas yung bata na nag-result sa mapunta sa disgrasya yung bata o kaya naman ay mamatay yung mismong bata. Pwede nilang isue yung ospital na yon. Punta naman tayo sa circumstances which gravely threaten or endanger the survival and normal development of child. Ito naman yung buhay na ng bata yung nakasalalay. Next is, number 1, live in a community where there is armed conflict and activities. So, dito papasok yung mga lugar kung saan panay giyera or panay patayan. Halimbawa na lang ng Syria, o kaya wag na tayo lumayo. Dito sa Pilipinas, sa Mindanao, o kaya sa Visayas. Most of the time kasi nagkakaroon ng enkwentro ang ating mga army or PNP. Ang kalaban nila is yung NPA o kaya naman ay mga hindi pa kilalang mga grupo na tumutuligsa sa batas ng gobyerno. Number 2 is ang working under conditions hazardous to life. So, nagtatrabaho naman dito yung mga bata at nalalagay sa bingit ng kamatayan ang kanilang buhay. For example nito yung sa documentary na yung mga bata is sinisisid yung mga piso upang makuha nila yung pera na hinahagis ng mga tao mula sa vapor. And then, syempre wala silang equipment at maaari silang mamatay dahil pwede silang mapulikat o di kaya na may maubusan ng hangin. Next is living in or fending for themselves. Ito'y binubuhay nila yung sarili nila. Halimbawa na lang nito is yung mga bata sa lansangan, yung mga palaboy doon, dahil wala namang mag-aalaga sa kanila. Namamalimos sila para mabuhay sila. Next is being a member of indigenous cultural community under poverty. Ito yung mga kababayan nating mga Pilipino na mga katutubo na nakararanas ng kahirapan, especially dun sa kabundukan. Dahil doon, kadalasan kasi, binabarat ng mga tagapatag yung mga binebenta nila o di kaya na may nilalamangan pa ng mga, hindi naman lahat, yung karaniwan sa mga tagapatag, nilalamangan nila yung mga katutubo. Next is victim of man-made or natural disaster. So, sa natural disaster, papasok din na yung ulan, bagyo, baha, lindol, at marami pang iba. And doon naman sa mga man-made na disaster ay ang sunog. Halimbawa na doon ay ang sunog. So, lumipat na tayo sa Comprehensive Program Against Child Abuse, Exploitation, and Discrimination. Number 1 dito ay ang child prostitution. Opo, tama po kayo nang narinig. Child prostitution. Meron kasing mga bata na kumakapit talaga sa patalim upang mabuhay ang kanilang sarili o di kaya na may makatulong kahit papano sa kanilang mga magulang. O kaya naman yung mga magulang mismo yung nag-uudyok sa mga bata upang maging prostitute. Number 2 ay ang child trafficking. Dito naman, most of the time is yung mga kinikidnap na bata. Ito yung mga binebenta ng mga sindikato. O di kaya naman, mga bata na walang magulang or may magulang pero kailangan ng pera, binebenta sila. Binebenta sa mga ibang tao at bibigyan sila ng panibagong pangalan at buhay. So, halimbawa na lang din yung nabalita sa GMA na isang foreigner may daladalang sanggol ngunit hindi naman ito nanganak sa Pilipinas. Kumbaga ay binili daw dito sa Pilipinas yung bata na yon at dadalhin sana sa abroad upang maging anak niya. Pwede naman kasing dumaan sa legal agreement or legal na paraan para hindi na mauwi sa hulihan or kaso. So, sino-sino nga ba yung mga under sa batas na to? Below 18 years of age or who is over 18 years of age but who cannot fully take care of himself because of mental disability or condition. So, sinasabi nga din na yung 18 years pababa o di kaya naman 18 years pataas na hindi kayang pangalagaan o ipaglaban ng kanyang sarili sa kadahilan ng meron siyang mental disability o kondisyon. So, magkano yung fine pagka halimbawa nakulong or nakasuhan ka nito? Nasa 1,000 pero hindi lalagpas sa 10,000 pesos. Maaari ka ding makulong ng 3 buwan hanggang 3 taon kapag nakasuhan ka nito. Diyan na po nagtatapos ang ating topic at andito na po si Sir Dave upang ipaliwanag po ang Proclamation number 688 Series of 2013.
Thank you, Ma'am Joy and Sabas. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. I'm Sir Dave Martin Amundilla, and now I will discuss the Proclamation number 688 Series of 2013. In November 2013, President Benigno S. Aquino signed Proclamation number 688 declaring the period of 2013 to 2022 as the Philippine Decade of Ancient Strategy to make the right real for persons with disabilities in support of the Third Asian and Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities. This is the response of the Philippine government to the new Asian and Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities, which was adopted by the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, or UNESCO. It's adopt the ancient strategy to make the Make Right real for persons with disabilities in Asia and Pacific, which comprises 10 goals, 27 targets, and 62 indicators. It directs the NCDA to lead all disability-related efforts by formulating a national plan of action for the decade which translate the objectives of disability-related laws and policies into concrete program. It also requires all departments, agencies, and instrumentalities of the national government and local government units to implement plans, programs, and activities geared toward the development of persons with disabilities in accordance with the ancient strategy. I will pass the time now to the next presenter, Ma'am Abigail Agustin.
Thank you, Sir Dave. Now, I will explain the Equality Act of 2010. States that a person has disability if they have a physical or mental impairment, which has a long-term and substantial adverse effect on their ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. The Equality Act of 2010 says that you must not be discriminated against because you have a disability. Someone thinks you have disability, or also known as discrimination by perception. You are connected to someone with disability, also known as discrimination by association. It is not unlawful discrimination to treat a disabled person more than a non-disabled person. The Equality Act of 2010 provides a single source of discrimination law. It simplifies the law and it extends protection from discrimination in some areas. As far as schools are concerned, meaning that schools cannot unlawfully discriminate against pupils because of their sex, race, disability, religion, or belief or sexual orientation. The exception to the discrimination provisions for schools are all replicated in the current act, such as the content of the curriculum, collective worship, and admissions to single-sex schools and schools for a religious character. Schools have responsibility for ensuring that disabled pupils can access internal examinations, but it also unlawful for qualification bodies to discriminate against pupils taking formal examinations. There are various ways in which pupils can be supported in the exam through measure, such as granting them in additional time, enabling them to use technology, and many more. Kailangan lang natin na equal ang ating tingin sa mga bata na may kapansanan man o wala. And that's all for my topic. Now the floor is yours, Ma'am Jessary Valeriano.
Thank you, Ma'am Abby. Now, good day everyone. I am Jessary C. Valeriano from BTLED 2A and I am assigned on the topic Successful Strategies for Teaching and Supporting Students with Disabilities. Now, to proceed, educators and administrators can do a lot to support students with disabilities in achieving their potential. But it can feel difficult to juggle all the responsibilities. Well, totoo naman yun, di ba? Tayong mga teachers ay may kakayahan na mahalin yung mga batang may disabilities, pero sa aminin man natin or hindi, ay hindi yun basta-basta at hindi yun madali. So, as I was saying, hindi ganun kadali i-take yung responsibility sa pag-aalaga at pagtuturo sa mga bata na may special needs. That is why Mrs. Marisa Rochelu, founder of Lingui Abilities, offers a number of simple things that teachers can do to address the needs of their students without feeling overwhelmed by all. So, here are some tips to let your students feel they are not discriminated and make them feel that they are welcome. So, number 1 is lean on others. Sabi ni Ms. Rochelu, I find it very helpful for educators to collaborate with entire team. It includes teachers, case managers, therapists, students, and even parents. So, sinasabi doon na as a teacher, okay lang kung magko-consult ka din sa iba. Kung hihingi ka ng advice, kung paano ka mas magiging effective na teachers. Pwede yun sa mga co-teachers mo, sa mga managers, therapists, and even sa ibang students at sa mga parents ng mga students mo. And also, sabi din doon, this is especially important in online schools where teachers and students don't have the added benefit of daily contact while passing in the hall. So, di ba sa online learning, hindi natin nakikita yung students natin personally. So, hindi natin malalaman agad kung okay ba talaga sila, kung komportable ba sila. So, mas maigi kung magko-consult tayo sa mga malapit sa kanila. And okay lang yun. So, the second one is to stay organized. Creating an organized classroom with minimal distraction can help students feel focused without adding unnecessary structures. Teachers can create system for helping students organize their notebooks while also making space for them to take a body break if they feel overwhelmed. So, syempre, bilang teacher, kailangan tayo mismo sa sarili natin is organize. Kasi kung hindi tayo organize, hindi tayo makakapag-create ng peaceful at malinis na environment sa classroom. So, pwede tayo gumawa ng mga space sa classroom na pwedeng gawan ng mga bata, ng mga box, kung saan matututo pa silang maging organized. And through that, makikita nila yung classroom as pwede nilang gawing pahingahan kasi malinis at organized. So, moving to the third one, it is don't reinvent the wheel. So, sabi dito, read through any accommodations or modifications ahead of time. Those accommodations and modifications are designed to give a template of how to help the student, so there should be clear goals or classroom accommodations already written for teachers to follow. So, gaya ng sabi, yun yung guide na kailangan i-follow ng isang teacher. At ang sabi din, don't reinvent the wheel. So, wala tayong kailangan baguhin. Halimbawa sa IEP. Di ba ang IEP is designed talaga siya to help students with special needs. So, kapag may binago tayo doon, maaaring magkaroon yun ng malaking impact sa bata. For example, nakalagay doon sa may accommodations or modifications na hindi natin pwedeng i-pressure yung bata sa mga gawain. Pero, dahil binabago mo yung nasa guide or nasa accommodation, pinipilit mo na ipe-pressure yung bata para ma-motivate siyang gawin lalo yung mga gawain niya. So, ngayon ang nangyari, imbes na ma-motivate siya, na-pressure lang siya at lalo siyang hindi nag-function. So, ganun yung example na pwedeng mabago kapag hindi natin sinunod yung mga guide na ibinibigay sa atin. Now, the next one is, we should know that each student is unique. Remember that each student learns differently. And some need visuals, while other needs to get in their kinesthetically feel through learning. Allow your students to learn a lot of opportunities to explore the subject in different ways. So, sinasabi lang dito na kailangan kahit na yung estudyante natin is a normal student or a student with special needs, kailangan i-consider natin sila as unique. Each and everyone is unique. So that kapag napansin ng estudyante natin na may disability na, bakit kaya tinatrato pa rin ako ni ma'am na unique kahit na alam ko naman sa sarili ko na may disability ako. So through that, pwede nating ma-boost yung self-esteem or yung confidence ng student natin na kahit pala ganun yung sitwasyon niya, ay meron pa rin na makakakita sa kanya as unique. And yun yung purpose nun. Kaya kailangan itrato natin sila as unique for them to appreciate themselves as unique ones. Next one is keep instruction simple. If students struggle to stay focused or take in lots of information at once, try to break things down into smaller tasks that feel more manageable and allow them to feel like they are accomplishing things throughout the day. So, sabi dyan, kailangan as much as possible, itry natin na mas simple lang lagi yung mga instructions natin sa mga students natin na may disability. Kasi karaniwan sa mga students na may disability ay nag-i-struggle lagi sila na mag-focus or makuha yung isang bagay ng isang take lang. And kapag ganun yung nangyayari, wag na wag tayong maiinis sa student natin para hindi rin nila maramdaman yung inis na bakit ba kasi hindi ko maintindihan to, ang simple-simple lang naman daw. Ganun. Wag na, iwasan natin yung pagkainis sa kanila para hindi rin sila mainis dahil hindi nila naiintindihan. And after that, itry pa natin ang itry. Kung pwede, hati-hatiin natin or i-breakdown natin into a smaller pieces hanggang sa maintindihan na ng student natin. At kapag naintindihan na ng student natin, kailangan maramdaman pa rin nila na, kumbaga, maramdaman pa rin nila yung accomplishment sa sarili nila na kahit ang hirap-hirap nung instruction na yun para sa kanila, paunti-unti, step by step, little by little, ay naintindihan nila yon. At hayaan natin sila na i-celebrate yung mga ganong maliliit na bagay lang. So, next one is embrace advocacy. Advocate for yourself and for your student. Reasonable classroom sizes and time for preparation and document is essential when you have students with special needs in your classroom. So, sabi dun, kailangan matuto tayong suportahan yung sarili natin at suportahan yung sarili natin para sa mga student natin. I mean, let us advocate for ourselves and for our students. So, syempre, kailangan suportahan mo yung sarili mo na kayang-kaya mo yan, na magagawa mo yan para sa student mo. And through that, magre-reflect yung motivations na yun mula sa sarili natin into actions para sa mga student natin. Kapag buong-buo yung suporta mo sa sarili mo, kayang-kaya mong gawin yun para sa mga estudyante mo. At yun yung isa sa mga kailangan at isa sa mga pinaka-importanting pangangailangan ng isang guro na may tinuturuan na isang estudyante na may special na pangangailangan. Create opportunities for success. Students with special needs often feel like they struggle to succeed. So create opportunities for them to recognize and celebrate their accomplishment. Creating lessons that lead to positive results and introducing rewards can help them stay motivated. So, as much as possible daw ay humanap tayo lagi ng oportunidad na mabigyan ng success yung mga students natin na may special need kasi mostly nararamdaman nila na lagi na lang sila nag-i-struggle sa pag-succeed. So, for example, gagawa tayo ng mga activities na alam naman natin na kaya ng mga student natin. Kasi iba yung saya nila kapag nagawa nila yung isang bagay. And through that, mafe-feel nila na pwede nilang i-celebrate yung success na yon at isa yun sa mga accomplishment nila. And hindi naman porket gagawa tayo ng isang bagay or isang activity na kayang-kaya naman nilang sagutin, ibig sabihin na nun dinadaya na natin yung success nila. Hindi. Kumbaga, tinutulungan lang natin sila na i-boost yung paniniwala nila na kahit nag-i-struggle sila sa success, at the end of the day, magagawa nila yun. Now for the last one, we have don't feel pressure to be perfect. Be patient with yourself and the student. You will both make mistakes and learn from them along the way. So, as I mentioned earlier, hindi madali ang maging teacher ng isang estudyante na may special needs. Sabi dyan, huwag natin i-pressure yung sarili natin na maging perfect teacher. Kasi, the more na pinupush natin maging perfect, the more na magkakaroon tayo ng pagkakamali. And malaki yung magiging impact nun sa students natin. So, rather, we should just be patient with ourselves. Maniwala lang tayo na, yes, hindi madali, pero kaya mo. Maniwala lang tayo na as much as nagtatry tayo or nag-e-effort tayo para sa mga students natin, maniwala lang tayo na magiging worth it yun para sa kanila. And parehas, ikaw at yung estudyante mo ay magkakaroon ng mga mistakes in the near future or habang nagdideal kayo sa isa't isa. And that's okay. Kasi, alam ko, gusgus na yung linya na to, pero, di ba, lagi nila sinasabi na yung mistakes daw natin ay meron at meron daw ibibigay na aral sa atin. At kahit gusgus na yung linya na yun, palagi pa rin yung magiging totoo. Meron at meron tayong matututunan sa mga pagkakamali natin, kaya okay lang kahit hindi tayo perfectong teacher. Now, that would be all for my presentation. Thank you, and now let us welcome Miss Vanessa Pilipina and Andrea Amor Guevara. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I'm Vanessa Pilipina from BTLAD 2A, and I will going to discuss the teaching tips and strategy. The first one is set the tone from day one. When the student first walk into your class for day one of a new term, let each of them know that all students are welcome and value and that the class will work as a team to lift one another up. Including this concept is any class materials and review it regularly. Sinasabi dito sa set the tone from day one, parang sa umpisa pa lang ng klase ay kukunin mo ang loob ng mga estudyante mo upang magkaroon sila ng palagayan ng loob, magkakaroon ng get to know each other, tapos isaset mo sila na mag-work sila as a team, walang lamangan, ganon. Mahalin nila yung kapwa nila estudyante at ituring nilang pamilya ang kanilang mga kaklase. Kung sino man yung hindi kayang, parang may nagda-down, gano'n, parang hindi nagsasucceed, parang tutulungan nila upang sila lahat ay one another up, parang lahat sila ay aangat, walang malalaglag. The second one is support your student in their learning. By using strategies of scaffolding, appropriate prompting, and material suited to the student level of achievement, you can ensure that they will both learn and succeed. Sinasabi lang dito na i-approach mo yung mga estudyante mo kung ano yung saan sila mahina, ganun, gagabayan mo sila, isusupport mo sila na kaya nilang gawin yung mga pinapagawa sa kanila. sinasabi appropriate prompting kung parang kakausapin nila na ayon sa kung ano yung kailangan nila, kung ano yung makapag-motivate sa kanila para gawin yung mga activity at sila ay matuto. The third one is structure lesson plans to support exclusivity. Rather than creating separate activities or learning plans for a student with disability, consider how you can include disability services in general plans and where you might be able to educate all learners about disability through the voice of those who experience them. Parang sinasabi lang dito na, parang bibigay sila ng inspirational stories about sa kanilang mga na-experience na for being a disabled na tao. Parang bibigay sila ng motivations para sa mga estudyante na may mga kukwento, mag-share ng kanyang mga experience para magbigay din ng aral sa mga estudyante niya or sa mga kapwa niya estudyante. Fourth one, assume your student can do something until proving wrong. Many times, students with disabilities are not given the benefits of the doubt when it comes to their abilities. Let all students have a chance to shine, support them when they do not succeed, and never assume a student cannot do something with seeing for yourself. Parang sinasabi dito na, i-motivate mo nga yung mga estudyante niya na kaya niyang gawin yung iniisip niya hindi niya kayang gawin. Support them para hindi sila panghinaan ng loob, parang papaalala sa kanila lagi na kaya nilang gawin yung mga hindi nila kayang gawin. Fifth one is communicate clearly with student and parents. All start of term. Clearly let your student know what your expectations are in terms of assignment and deadline. Share information with parents so they can support their child in being succeed. Parang sinasabi lang dito na magkakaroon ng meeting ang mga estudyante at parents para ma-inform sila kung ano bang mangyayari sa buong semester, kung ano yung expectation ng teachers, kung ano gagawin sa mga assignment, at kung hanggang kailan ipapas ang magagawin. Kailangan i-inform ang mga family ng mga student para alam nila yung gagawin nila, kung paano nila tuturuan yung mga estudyante nila para mapagtagumpayan ng mga estudyante ang mga pinapagawa sa kanila.
And for the next one, partner students with disabilities with students who do not have disabilities. Peer mentioning is a wonderful resource for teaching social skills, problem solving, and independence. Encourages Rachelu, it allows both students with disabilities and those without to appreciate each other for their strength and to learn from each other's experiences. And for the next one, make yourself available. So a student might not want to speak up in a room full of their peers if they feel themselves falling behind or not understanding material. They might speak to you one-to-one about the issue. Make sure your strength know when and where they can find you to discuss any problem arising. And for the next one, model the behaviors you want to see in your students. If we want our students to act a certain way, one of the easiest way is to show them that behavior in ourselves. Says Rachelu, this goes for reading a book, interacting socially, or simply treating others with respect. And for the next one, allow all students to work on the same assignments. Students who feel they are receiving assignments different from those their peers receive assume that teachers do not think they are capable of succeeding. Rather than setting different projects, assign the same ones but allow the students with disabilities to work towards the goals in different ways. Use accommodations to help them feel like they are part of the class rather than separate. And for the last one, create resources for all students, not just those with disabilities. By making things like a self-selected quiet corner, stress balls, or large print books available to all students. In fact, many general education students enjoy having the extra supports and perform better when given a little extra choice or sensory input in their days.